channel. I think we will have some people joining us on Teams, so if they are joining, if you could make sure that your camera is off when you're not speaking, and use the electronic hand raise if you want to speak, and I'll hopefully spot you. So we will kick off first with apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. We've had apologies from Councillors Bagg, Darlington, Hussain, Lambert and Walsh.
Thank you, and I'll try and remember to use my microphone. It's been a while since I've done a Fire Authority meeting. Secondly, on behalf of the Authority, I'd like to welcome Councillor Mohammed Khan to the meeting from Milton Keynes City Council. Welcome. Very good to have you with us. Third item is minutes to approve and sign as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the Fire Authority held on the 14th of June. Are there any questions as to accuracy only? In which case, are members happy for me to approve and sign? Thank you. So item number 4, moving on to matters arising from the previous meeting. FA 13, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Objectives 2020 to 25, Year 3 update. So the item here was that the Chairman asked for a list of identified works needed to upgrade premises in line with ED&I objectives. The Deputy Director of Finance and Assets has circulated this list to members. The Operational Assurance Improvement Plan, which included recommendations from Grenfell and Manchester Arena, would be presented at the next Authority meeting in October. This has in fact been deferred now to the December meeting. FA 14, Exploring Our Culture. There was a request to split out the 2 actions from Recommendation 4 to review the red, amber, green on Recommendations 20 and 21. Review narrative and presentational aspects. The plan has now been updated, and furthermore the service is looking to roll out standardised RAG ratings across all areas following an assurance review undertaken by internal audit. FA 16, Performance Management, Q4 2022-23, showed that fewer appraisals were completed this year and a slight improvement in mandatory learning, but still some way to go. The Chairman asked if these could be elevated up as the focus. Also, it was very important to get some climate change metrics in place. The climate change metrics have been updated for the Q1 report, which we're getting to later, and the service continues to emphasise the importance of the completion of appraisals and mandatory e-learning. E-learning appraisals should be the next key focus. This is a priority for the OD team, and 360-degree appraisals have now been completed at SMT level and are currently being rolled out to middle managers. Matter arising FA 17, recent changes to fire safety, building safety legislation and regulations. Protection workshop will be held once new NFCC guidance on enforcement is finalised. Are there any questions on the matters arising? Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, firstly, can you assure me, I don't recall, Chairman, seeing those paperwork, that we all have lots of emails and I can make a mistake. Can you please assure me you'll send them back out? And secondly, can I ask through you whether any of our esteemed firefighters were involved in the Luton issue? Because I think we all would share with Luton, and I think through you, Chairman, we need to find out exactly what the causes of that is, because we do have multi-storey car parks in both Milton Keynes and Buckinghamshire, and if there's any lessons to be learned, I know that you would, with officers, look into that, because it's a very concerning picture on the news this morning and late last night.
So on your first item, yes, if I can ask for the premises work to be recirculated, just in case members had missed them. And as ever, Councillor Stutchbury, you're ahead of me. I'm covering that in Chairman's announcements on Luton. So if you just bear with me, I'm going to answer that for you.
I always like to be ahead.
I always like you being ahead of me as well. So we've moved to, for no other matters arising, we move to item number 5, disclosure of interests. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests that members wish to declare? Take that as a no. Thank you very much. Which moves us to Chairman's announcements. So I've got 4 announcements. Firstly, welcome to Doug Buchanan, who joins us at his first meeting of the Authority since his appointment into the role of Area Commander Protection, Assurance and Development. Doug joined us in September 2023 from Royal Berkshire Fire and Rescue Service, where he was Head of Response and Resilience. So welcome. Secondly, I'm delighted to say that today the Prince of Wales is visiting the Blue Light Hub to highlight the importance of supporting the mental health of emergency responders during the week of World Mental Health Day. The Prince will meet with a group of young people who've recently joined the emergency services. His Royal Highness will hear firsthand from those in the early stages of their careers about the challenges they face. The conversation will be focused on the vital importance of equipping those working in the emergency services with the skills to help protect their mental health and build their resilience. And we'll be joined by broadcaster, journalist and psychologist Dr. Sian Williams. Supporting the mental health of this community is a cause close to the heart of the Prince of Wales, as he saw firsthand the challenges emergency responders face on a daily basis while serving as a pilot with RAF Search and Rescue and East Anglian Air Ambulance. Third item to announce, I'm delighted to say that 7 apprentice firefighters commenced on the 29th of August and a further 18 started on the 27th of September. This now brings the operational establishment to 314, the first time it's been at this level for 10 years. The recruitment campaign for 18 apprentice firefighters is open until the 5th of November to allow for a more targeted campaign and increased lead time for applications to be submitted. Successful applicants would start in late May 2024. The service advertised for crew commander and watch commander transferees and invited 3 crew commanders to the organisational development selection process on the 2nd of October and a watch commander to the process on the 5th of October. Can I extend my congratulations to the team for the fantastic progress on recruitment. It's great to see the operational headcount now above establishment, and I know it's been a huge amount of work, so congratulations. I'll now turn to item number 4, which relates to the item Councillor Stutchbury just raised. So members will have seen in the news reports that Luton Airport was closed overnight due to a significant fire in one of the short-stay multi-storey car parks. Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service received calls to a fire involving a car on level 3 of the multi-storey car park at 8:47 p.m. It's believed that the fire started in a vehicle that would have arrived shortly before this time, which rapidly spread to other vehicles in the building, in all affecting over 1,200 vehicles and causing significant structural collapse of the car park. Just after 10 p.m. last night, Thames Valley Fire Control were contacted by Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service Control, requesting that Buckinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service resources to assist with this declared major incident. An aerial appliance supported by a rescue pump was mobilised from West Ashlands and remained on scene for a number of hours until relieved by the aerial appliance from High Wycombe and rescue pump from Amersham. Officers from BFRS were also mobilised to support BFRS resources. BFRS resources were stood down at around 4 a.m. this morning. At its peak, there were 15 rescue pumps, 3 aerial appliances and over 100 firefighters on scene at this incident. Resources from Buckinghamshire, Cambridgeshire, Hertfordshire, Northamptonshire and London Fire Brigade, along with Bedfordshire Police and East of England Ambulance, all supported this incident. Bedfordshire FRS will remain in attendance for a significant amount of time, and BFRS will continue support if further requests are received. Reports state that a number of firefighters were treated for smoke inhalation, but all have thankfully been released from hospital. No one from BFRS was treated. This is another great example of cross-border working where BFRS have supported over-the-border colleagues. Are there any questions on Chairman announcements? Councillor Stutchbury.
Well, firstly, thank you, Chairman, for that thorough and detailed report on what our firefighters have done and our cross-border working. I must say our thanks to the team for the way that they supported it, and it just shows that firefighters and the fire service is a robust and reactive service, and we can only thank our team for what they've done. And as stated earlier, I will be immensely interested, as I'm sure you are yourself, Chairman, to find out the analysis of what caused it, as we do, as we said earlier in our interluded conversation before you did your Chairman's announcement, to find out exactly what causes was, because we do have multi-storey car parks in Milton Keynes, in hospitals, we have them in in Aylesbury here, and we do need to learn lessons from this in case there's something that we can implement to prevent some tragedy like this happening locally or in Buckinghamshire. And I'm sure you will follow that up diligently, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Yes, I'm sure officers will make sure that we do a proper review of it and lessons learned are shared. And indeed, it strikes me as something we should maybe pick up in the CRMP as well. Thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just on the Luton issue, I'm very familiar with that car park. I go there an awful lot, and it's one of these more modern ones, mainly of steel construction, rather than the traditional concrete types that we have around here. But yeah, we're seeing more and more of these steel multi-stories going up. They have a shorter lifespan than the traditional concrete ones, and they're a lot cheaper to build. So I think they are going to be a hazard for us going forward.
Doug.
Yeah, Chair, if I could just offer some assurance to members. You're quite right, these sorts of car parks, and particularly with the types of cars we're seeing now, do present a risk. However, we do have some experience, because there was an incident about two or 3 years ago in Merseyside that we took a lot of learning from already. So in terms of providing members assurance around our risk information, we have really strong up-to-date risk information around multi-storey car parks within the county that will support and direct crews around their activities if we were to have an incident of such in the county. Predetermined attendances have been reviewed alongside those risk assessments, and furthermore, training was rolled out from the previous learning from that incident up north. So whilst it's quite right that we should look again, I suppose, in light of this incident that happened last night, I think we're quite well placed in terms of our understanding and management of that risk.
Thank you. Moving us on to item number 7, petitions. Have we received any petitions?
None received, Chairman.
Thank you. Item number 8, questions. Have we received any questions?
None received, Chairman.
Okay. Item number 9, membership of the authority, which is to note the change in appointments from Milton Keynes City Council. Is there anything you want to add, Graham?
Yes, so as set out on top of page 5 of the agenda packs, due to a change in nominations from Milton Keynes Council made on the 19th of July 2023, the nominated appointments from Milton Keynes Council changed from Darlington, Exon, Fuller, Hopkins, McLean to Darlington, Exon, Fuller, Carner, McLean. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you very much. Moves us to item number 10, committee matters. So this is firstly to note the new political proportionality for the authority, which is on page 5. And secondly, if I can ask Graham to read the group leaders' nominations for Executive Committee and Overview and Audit Committee for the authority's approval.
Thank you, Chairman. Due to those aforementioned changes from the Milton Keynes contingent, there's been a change in the proportionality across the authority. So taking the group leaders' wishes for appointments to the Executive Committee from the Conservative Party Chairman, it's as follows: Ado, Hall, McLean, Rouse, Walsh, and for the Overview and Audit Committee, Bagg, Carroll, Chappell, OBE, Hussain, Waite. And in respect of nominations from the group leader for the Labour Party, onto the Executive Committee are appointed Darlington and Fuller, and onto the Overview and Audit Committee, Khan and Stutchbury. Now, in respect of the Liberal Democrat group's wishes, I've not received any notification from the group leader, so I'll just offer that over to the two representatives from the Liberal Democrat group to make those nominations on behalf of the group, Chairman.
So, Councillor Exon, Christensen, do you want to make any nominations?
So nominate Councillor Stephen Lambert for the Executive Committee. And Councillor Exon, speak English, and Stephen Lambert for the Audit Committee, please.
So onto the Executive Committee,
The Executive Committee, Stephen Lambert.
Yeah, so onto the Overview and Audit Committee, it would be yourself and Exon.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. That moves us on to item number 11, appointment of a Vice Chairman. We need to appoint a Vice Chairman of the authority. Graham, to ask for nominations.
Thank you, Chairman. Are there any nominations for the position of Vice Chairman of the authority?
So I'd like to nominate Councillor Keith McLean.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Plenty of seconders, thank you. Are there any other nominations for the position of Vice Chairman? There being none, Councillor McLean is duly appointed as the Vice Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you
Congratulations,
very much.
Councillor McLean. Sorry, I didn't want to stop accepting the speech there, but congratulations. That moves us on to item number 12, lead member responsibilities. So Graham Britton to ask for nominations of members from the Executive Committee for the following roles: Health and Safety and Corporate Risk, and People Equality and Diversity and Assurance.
Thank you, Chairman. With Councillor McLean having been appointed as the Vice Chairman, that creates a vacancy for his former position of Health and Safety and Corporate Risk lead member. So can I ask for nominations for that vacant role, please? And that's for the Health and Safety and Corporate Risk lead member.
I'd like to propose Councillor Gary Hall.
And can I have a seconder? Thank you. Are there any other nominations from that position from members of the Executive Committee? There being none, Councillor Hall is appointed into that role of Health and Safety and Corporate Risk. Chairman, that has an ensuing effect in terms of Councillor Hall's former role of People, Equality and Diversity and Assurance, so that role becomes vacant. So if I could have nominations into that position from members of the Executive Committee, please.
I'd like to propose Councillor Sade Ado.
Can I have a seconder?
I'd like to second that.
Where did that come from? Gary Hall. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Are there any other nominations into that position? There being none, Councillor Ado is appointed into that role. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you. That moves us on to item number 13, recommendations from committee. The first item is the member officer protocol. We're being asked to approve the protocol and it be recommended for the authority from adoption. And it's been through the Overview and Audit Committee, so I'll hand over to Graham Britton to introduce it.
Thank you, Chairman. As indicated, this report is being presented to the authority as part of the quadrennial review of the authority's protocol on member officer relations. The protocol complements the authority's members' code of conduct. The document before you today has been approved by the Overview and Audit Committee, and before then it was reviewed by the employee representatives via the Joint Consultation Forum at its meeting on the 1st of March 2023, who were in agreement that the protocol should include reference to the 5 ethical principles from the Core Code of Ethics for Fire and Rescue Services, which was subsequently then incorporated into the updated Employee Code of Conduct 2023 when approved by the Executive Committee at its meeting on the 22nd of March 2023. There are a few substantive amendments, and they are shown underlined in the document, which starts at page 29 of your agenda pack. Members will note that the additional text at paragraph 5.13 and the appendix to the protocol, which is at page 43 of your agenda packs. They are the only proposed amendments, and as I said, they incorporate the ethical principles, Chairman.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from members? Councillor Stuttery.
Yeah, thank you very much. Firstly, thank you for the document. It's a very important document. Reading through it, I think if you go to 5.9, it evidently states about the cooperative working between members and the fire service. And it also, if you go to 6.1, it responds the response around the robust ability to be able to make complaints, which I think is very important. And if you go to 6.2 and to 6.8, and the one in 6.8 I think reflects the growing responsibility in the firefighting, the way we look at things with 6.8 is not to be subject to any intimidation, harassment, or put any under pressure members have regards to senior officers and determine what responsibilities and requests they have, and it goes on. I think that those sorts of things are very important in a fire authority such as our own, to make sure that there's rigid boundaries between ourselves, elected members, and not to be able to prevent good practice with officers. And I think that seeing those in there gives me reassurance that policies we've got respect the different roles we play in the local authority, the fire authority. And I think it's a class piece of document. I thank the officers for the work going on it. And of course on item 10.1, it recommends any breaches and whatever that we can actually follow up, and it puts procedures in place to do so. So it's a very robust document. It allows both parties, both interests who work cooperatively together to be able to have a form of practice around which we can operate under. And I would think that this is the right framework for us to do, and I think it's great that it has been done, and I look forward to it playing its way out with its changes and amendments to make a smooth, business-like and cooperative between all members of the authority and the important parts of the authority, which is the firefighters and senior management. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stuttery. Any other comments or questions? In which case, can I ask members, are you happy to approve the protocol on member and officer relations and that it be adopted by the authority? Thank you. Moves us on to item 13B. Slightly throw me, I was expecting a B. Which is the 2025 to 30 CRMP Community Risk Management Plan, Listening and Engagement Consultation Outcomes. So as members know, we took a decision last year to bring forward our successor plan to the 2020-25 Public Safety Plan, which is going to be known as the Community Risk Management Plan. And as part of that, we undertook a listening engagement exercise, which is an important part of the process. So I'm going to ask Stuart Gowanlock to introduce the report.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So this consultation was carried out as part of wider consultation and engagement activities with other key stakeholders, including our own staff and partner organisations, the findings from which will be included in summary form in the draft CRMP ahead of the formal public consultation stage. We carry out initial consultations at an early stage in the CRMP development process in order to comply with national framework and fire standard requirements, and also those of the principles long established in the gunning principles, as they set out the legal tests that define what constitutes a legitimate consultation, including, for example, that proposals are consulted on when they are still at a formative stage to ensure that decisions have not been subject to predetermination, and that there is sufficient information to enable intelligent consideration, resulting in an informed response. These requirements tend to favour qualitative methods of consultation when dealing with complex issues, hence our use of independently and expertly facilitated focus groups that allow participants to discuss and consider CRMP-related issues in depth. As you will have seen from page 11 of the report, which is page 59 in your pack, a diverse and broadly representative sample of the population were recruited to participate in the consultation. Because of this, Opinion Research Services, who carried out the consultation work on our behalf, advised that the outcomes are broadly indicative of how the public at large would incline if we were able to engage with a much larger proportion of the population in this way. I don't propose to go into fine detail about the outcomes of the consultation. However, as you will have seen, it was structured into two main parts. First, an exploration of the participants' perceptions of risk in their communities and of us as a service, covering things like their awareness of what we do and whether we're value for money and so on. And with previous consultations of this type, fire is seldom mentioned spontaneously as something that participants worry about on a day-to-day basis, even though they know that the consultation is being commissioned by the Fire and Rescue Service. However, there was a good exploration of some topical fire risks later on in the discussions, such as wildfire and those related to lithium-ion batteries. In the second part, we explored some of the challenges that the service faces and potential ways that we might respond to them. These included key issues raised by the HMI CFRS in their Round 2 inspection report, including the future of the on-call service, automatic fire alarms, and workforce diversity. The public's preferences in relation to these are summarised at pages 8 to 9 of the report. That's 56 to 57 in your pack. In addition, we also took the opportunity to explore some other topical issues that are not necessarily directly related to the production of a CRMP to test public perceptions and reactions. As you'll have seen, this included the recent national issues raised in the media and by the HMI CFRS regarding Fire and Rescue Service workplace culture. Finally, a little something on what we plan to do with the outcomes of the consultation. Firstly, we will reference them in the evaluation of risks to the community that we are carrying out to inform the priorities of the new CRMP, so that the public perception can be seen alongside our own professional assessments. Also, we will have regard to them as we develop specific proposals for the management of risk in the community that will be included in the draft CRMP, which we plan to publicly consult on in the spring of next year, following approval to do so at the February Fire Authority meeting. Lastly, we will include a summary of the outcomes of the consultation and what we have done with the findings in the draft CRMP, as we have done with previous plans of this type. So that's it from me. If I may, I'll now hand back to the Chairman for any questions or comments that members may have.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Any questions, comments from members? Councillor Stutchbury.
Well, firstly, can I thank the officer for a very thorough report, which encapsulates many of the issues that we've discussed through the period before we draft the report. And it also, which is really encouraging, cites the known issues around infrastructure, which is included in the report, which is changing in Bucks, and we don't need to discuss what the main infrastructure change is in Bucks, but it recognises it in the report. Also, it also recognises the ongoing issues to do with Glenford Fire, and it recognises some recommendations, and it also, which is much to his credit, in 3.3a, following the general conversations around practices, make sure that we've got a robust looking at the risks of the way we participate ourselves, working cooperatively with members around bullying, harassment and such like. And I think this is a very good document. He's covered everything that we've discussed. And I think, especially around the workplace diversity, which is something which the Fire Authority has been working to try and improve our numbers on all sorts of communities and identities. So I think, you know, we must commend him for the work he's done, and I'm very happy to support the report, Chairman, especially as the fact that it goes into the fine detail around most of these things, and to his credit, he's encapsulated them all in this report, and I'm sure these are matters that will come up again in committees going forward, and I think it's an excellent piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stutchbury. Any other comments or questions? Councillor McLean.
Thank you very much, and I'd echo what Councillor Stutchbury said about the quality of the report. Just a couple of comments on the point that Stuart brought out about the makeup of the focus groups. As said, it's 40 diverse participants, but it was in a ratio of 1 to 3 in Milton Keynes to Buckinghamshire. That's not quite, so it's not, doesn't reflect the population split between Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes. But I think being ONS, it's probably sound. Those of you who've been on the Fire Authority for some time will know that I have a view about what the Fire Service's name should be. Unfortunately, I lost in the focus groups by an unstated number.
Thank you. For people that might not have read the report, just worth stating that we asked the question about whether the service should change its name to Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes Fire and Rescue Service, and it was an emphatic no on the basis of value for money from residents. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't consider it, but that's the feedback from residents. Councillor Day.
Try this one.
Thank you very much. I just must echo what the comments by Councillor Studbury and Councillor McLean. Looking at the sample size, I'm just wondering why 40?
It's what the research company does is try to recruit up to 12 for each focus groups, and they usually then recruit a bit more than that. But it's luck of the draw. Sometimes people will say they will come, and then they don't turn up, as it were. And it's basically because we've tried to get just in terms of the structure of the groups, we've got 5 groups there. They're designed to kind of mirror the geography and demography of the county, and obviously Milton Keynes as well. In terms of focus groups, typically a sort of number somewhere between 7, 8, 12, up to 12 maybe works well, because you're basically having quite a sort of an intimate discussion in a way. I mean, these things last for scheduled for 2 hours. They quite often go longer than that, up to 2.5 hours, because once people get going, you'd be amazed how interested the public become in this process. Yeah, that's basically, it's just a reflection of, what's a workable number, and also sufficient size across all of them just to get a reasonably representative sample of the public. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, in which case, just two comments, questions from me. So firstly, the section from page 69 onwards on workforce diversity was quite striking in terms of setting out the perception challenge that we have, both about the importance of diversity, but also how we attract different parts of the communities that we serve. I'd just be interested in, we need to make sure that, as well as that informing the CRMP process, it felt to me like really important input to our ongoing both communications activity, but also recruitment activity. I'd just be interested if officers could just talk to us about how they're using that and what they're intending to do with that insight. And then the second area, which we've got an item later on the response strategy, but from page 71 onwards, the on-call availability in the future, the on-call service, I was quite, again, struck, and I know I've discussed this separately with officers, struck by the fact we were exploring options with residents that, it strikes me, don't need to go through sort of formal consultation. It feels to me there are things in there about four-wheel vehicles, how we decide to crew on an overall level rather than a station level that we could be getting on with. And again, I just welcome some observations from officers on what could we be getting on with, because we know we've got a significant challenge with on-call availability, which we can of course hardwire into the CRMP, but doesn't require us to wait for the CRMP. Anne first, and you picking up the second one. Yeah, so Anne first.
So just on the recruitment side of things, so the workforce planning group meet on a monthly basis. They're meeting later on, and the last meeting that they had, they basically looked at, yes, we've reached the 300 operational establishment target, but what do they need to focus on next? So there were 5 key areas, and there are going to be workshops that they look at for that, for diversity, communications, recruitment, succession, talent management and retention. So they will be taking the CRMP and the work that's been done there and feeding that into those workshops moving forward.
Thank you. And Doug?
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, just in relation to that second point, I suppose, around what are the opportunities between now and CRMP, and I noted the link myself insofar as if we are sort of carrying over a response strategy, it can't be at the cost of kind of getting on with some areas of improvement that we essentially know have to happen. But again, just to provide members with some assurance, delving a little bit into Area Commander Simon's work, but we are currently doing some on-call trials, so just trialling some different things at different stations. We know in some places the traditional on-call model is really challenging and it will remain challenging. There are some areas around on-call that I think do stray into CRMP territory if you're talking about changes to terms and conditions and contracts and bits like that. But there's absolutely some bits that Simon is looking at and trialling as we speak to basically make the most of the number of people potentially rather than the number of on-call stations, if you understand where I'm going with that. Similarly, there's some things that will come through the CRMP around response to automatic fire alarms. There are probably opportunities that certain things could be trialled in relation to that in line with our Thames Valley partners in advance of the CRMP actually getting agreed to form a level of evidence and an assurance about whether that's the right thing to do or not going forward. So essentially what I'm trying to say is there's some, for me, the CRMP is key to kind of future delivery, but I think officers are doing work in between now and that period of time to seek those improvements around response that you require.
Thank you, that was really helpful. Can I just ask, so I think it would be, and I'll leave officers to determine the best timeline, but I think we should have a bit more of a deeper dive into on-call, the strategy for on-call executive to then bring back to the fire authority. So if we could ask our officers just to reflect on the best timing for that, and then let's look at some of the trials and other things that we know are going on nationally as well that we can learn from. Good. So any final comments? In which case, we are being asked to... Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. No. Councillor Stutchbury, I'm sorry. I'm going to be a bit disciplined today on members speak once on an item.
Have you done a risk assessment on that, have you?
Councillor Stutchbury,
that you don't get a
Councillor
question
Stutchbury, I'm talking.
that you put to
Councillor
council at
Stutchbury,
risk.
I'm talking. Thank you. Look, I give members a lot of time to talk in the meeting. The standing order is really clear that members talk once on an item. If it's an item of really significant detail where I think there are strong views, then I've often used latitude, but it's also important we don't let the meetings run longer than they need to, so members can only speak once. I think I had Councillor Fuller and Councillor Carr. So Councillor Fuller first? No. Oh, you're pointing him at Councillor Carr?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of recruitment of diversities, city like Milton Keynes, 46% population of a diverse background. Recruitment for fire authorities is important, well as covering a Buckinghamshire and Aylesbury side. So in terms of how you recruited and how you're targeting the candidate you're looking to replace, in terms of recruitment place, you probably need to look into closely with the different parts of the society, how you advertise them to recruit young people from different backgrounds. I think we need to explore this bit more options, sir. Thank you.
Anyone, officer, want to respond to that, Anne?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of our current campaign, we are focusing on women. For example, we've got Have a Go Days coming up for females. We're looking at specifically targeting females. We have done work on the South Asian community. So we do run lots of reports of actually who's applying for the for example, for whole-time apprentices, who's applied and what and their protected characteristics and what when are they actually falling out of the application process. So we are trying to really drill into that and look at actually which areas we need to target and where we need to advertise. That is part of the workforce planning group's work and is one of the specific areas that we're going to be working on for the workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
I just wanted to pick up on the comment that you made earlier about there was an emphatic no to it becoming a Milton Keynes and Bucks Fire and Rescue Service. It may be, as you alluded to, it may be worth considering that more deeply. People feel more engaged and more involved if it reflects the name in the city that it serves. That may help recruitment in a stroke.
Thank you, Councillor. So my point wasn't misunderstood. I was trying to explain for people watching who might not have known what Councillor McLean was referring to, the feedback. I think, as I also said, it doesn't mean we wouldn't do it. I think it's important that we take the feedback from residents, but we determine our own view on it for reasons that you quite rightly say there may be good reasons why we should do it. I think what residents were saying is that they were concerned it was not value for money to make the changes. But for the avoidance of doubt, I wasn't personally saying we shouldn't do it. I think we should definitely consider it. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, just on that point, perhaps Mr Osborne can help us here, but I don't believe that Merseyside call themselves Merseyside and Liverpool Fire and Rescue Service, or Berkshire call themselves Berkshire and Reading Fire and Rescue Service. And I think just, you know, where do you stop? You know, you have to draw the line somewhere.
So if it's okay, I'll avoid the Deputy Chief Fire Officer having to confirm the nomenclature of each fire and rescue service across the country. I think the important point here is we've undertaken extensive consultation with residents across a range of issues. What we now need to do is distill that feedback and consider it needs to be balanced against other considerations that we'll have about changes that we make, and that should include the service. So members can be reassured this isn't a residents have said this, therefore we must do X. This is the views of residents. How does it sit against the balance of other things we need to consider? So we will progress it as part of the CRMP process. Can I ask members, are we happy to note the update on the CRMP? Thank you. That moves us to item 13C, which is our regular performance management report. There have been some improvements to the report, which I will let Craig outline. Hand over to Craig.
Good morning, all. I'm pleased to present the key performance measure report for Q1 23-24. As you have seen, there have been a number of changes based on the feedback received throughout the last year. The most notable changes include the layout of the report, which now includes room for commentary for each measure and more room to provide a better description for each measure. We have also included some new measures, the details of which can be found in the cover paper of this report. It's also worth noting that we've already received feedback in relation to the two measures around the environment, for which we'll be updating within the Q2 report. As for the performance itself, detailed within the report, it's encouraging to see the impact of the incidents in the home and in the workplace are generally where we'd expect them to see them based on the targets set. However, it would be remiss not to highlight the area detailed in the response model. This area primarily details the availability of our appliances across our whole-time fleet and on call. As seen in the report, this area has yet to reach its expected position. In relation to whole-time figures, there are a number of reasons that have attributed to these figures. However, the service has identified that the largest impact of these numbers is a skills gap within the current workforce, primarily in relation to drivers and junior officers. As mentioned within the commentary, a range of initiatives have been agreed by our SMB to improve resilience of our frontline resources. As always, I appreciate there's a lot of information within the report, so I will take this opportunity to take any questions.
Any questions from members? Councillor Stutchbury.
We'll do it in one at a time, because we can only speak once. Bank shifts, you described in your report about the bank shifts and the moderate risk around it, and I think with the cooperative working between our employees and whatever, I need to at some point have an understanding about how bank shifts work and where there's any fragility in there, because it's a statement bank shifts doesn't really describe in the report, which I understand why for the report, but this is a public meeting, what that actually means and how that actually works. And you also, secondly, you also, which is a very important part of your report, you know, it states, and to your credit, you state the risk of attacks on staff and members. And we live in a society where this is prevalently a risk to staff and members, and we have a responsibility working through the trade union and the workers to make sure that our employees are well covered. And I think you covered the risk in there. I'd like to at some point understand a little bit more of the nature of the detail. I don't think that's for today, because I am concerned that, you know, we ask our firefighters to go out and do things for us, and they're at the front end of something, and sometimes they are at the robust end of situations of which they don't have anything to do. And also, thirdly, the vehicle incidents, I don't think we need to go into types and what it is, and I'm glad that you've raised the risk of vehicle incidents, but at some point, the health and safety issues around that and whatever, just the incidents doesn't give you the gravity or the types of incidents. They could be very small and they can be very major, and it doesn't, and that needs to be quantified in a a safe portal where we understand those preferences and risks, because otherwise what we're doing is raising a concern which is a moderate concern, because it might just be a vehicle parked against something, you know, whatever. But I do think that you've tried hard in the report to meet your objectives. And the other one which is you've raised, which is appraisal objections and complaints. Any organisation such as the Fire Authority, who works cheek by jowl with other organisations in a very robust world which is challenging, will always receive complaints. And you have got a figure in there. I don't think it's the point of targeting the figure, but I do think that the fact that you've recorded it is to your credit, and we do have to try and quantify all these things, because our responsibility, I believe, as representatives on the firefight, is the well-being of our employees, who only by looking after them can we then really be sure that they're in a robust position to be able to deal with the situations in a financial world which is challenging, and with the ability to recruit, which we mentioned earlier, which is always challenging. So we do need to look at that, and I hope that those points that I raised, being as I'm limited to speaking once, we'd raise them all one after the other, rather than come back again. I could always ask other questions, but I thought they were the primary areas around the welfare of the staff, the way we interact, and the safety of the employees, which I'm interested in. And I'm sure you've got an answer to that. And it's not a criticism of the report, it's a comment on the report.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, I was going to ask you, you're going to respond, are you?
Yeah. So I will pass over to the Chief in a second. However, the only thing I would say is it's hard getting that balance of producing a report that gives you an overview of where we are. So some of those things you commented on are detailed within other reports, so you would be able to get a more detail, but this is for us to get an overview of how we're performing at a quick glance so that we can react if need be. But with that said, I'll pass off over to Chief.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Thanks, Councillor. Thanks, Chairman. I think I picked out sort of three main questions there. With regard to the first point on bank shifts, with the bank shifts, there's a direct correlation between numbers of whole-time staff that we have and numbers of bank shifts required. The good news is, as you heard earlier, we are above our target now, or above our establishment with the apprentices that we got at the Fire Service College. And actually, we got the figures this week. So for this period, a year ago, we're 36% down on bank shift requirements, which is a positive. And it is always that balance between, you know, sort of how many staff we have available to us to how many bank shifts are required. But for the same period last year, we're 36% down on bank shifts required. So I hope that covers that point. The bit around attacks on staff, obviously any attack on our staff is one too many, and the numbers are very low, thankfully, and we do engage with the public a lot on this matter, and you know, we will always report that to the police. There is a new law that's come out around attacks on emergency workers, so we do work hard on that in that area. Unfortunately, across the country, there was a report that came out in June of this year that attacks on firefighters had increased significantly around the country. But again, we're not one of those areas that seems to be a hotspot, but it's one that we do monitor very closely. And your point around vehicle accidents, as Craig said, that is captured in other reports. And the Health and Safety Committee, which I chair, we absolutely drill down into every vehicle incident that we have to see if we could be avoided, how we could avoid it in the future. I'm sure Councillor McLean will support me in that. That is probably my biggest bugbear.
Slow speed manoeuvres.
Slow speed manoeuvring incidents is probably one of the things that annoys me the most. But I hope that covers the points that you raised, Councillor.
Thank you very much for the frank and proper response, and I'll draw my attention to them reports and I'll read them. Thank you.
Good. Councillor Christensen.
Just a comment around the format of the report. There's lots of really good information in it, but I found quite difficult to judge whether an issue was important or not. And you do note on the covering page that some of the targets are aspirational, some are there to monitor minimum standards, but it's quite difficult when you're reading through the report to immediately judge whether something sort of jumps out, it's red, you know, it's in red, you jump to it and it's kind of like, well, that's aspirational, so that's not so serious as a minimum standard requirement. Just wondering whether in the future that we can just mark out, more clearly identify which ones are measuring minimum standards and which ones are aspirational.
Yeah, that's something we can do. We, in the previous year, we also used to do highlighted measures. I don't know if that's something members would want to see again, but we could do a mixture of the target type and highlighted measures if that would help.
I think it'd be good to look at that. I mean, I think just to add for members, this report is a really important part of our scrutiny of the service, and therefore, you know, I'd encourage members, you know, if we've got ideas, to keep feeding them through to the team, because it's important we keep iterating the report to make it useful both for members but also for officers, and I think it's worth us looking at that. I also think, I'm sure I speak for officers, if there are specific detailed questions that you've got, you don't need to wait for an authority meeting. You can feed those through to officers as well. But yeah, if we can look at that idea from Councillor Christian, I think that's a good thing. Any other comments before I ask mine? So Councillor Carroll.
I think it's worth saying, actually, Chairman, that this report, I think, is really good, and congratulations to the officer. I know how much work goes into this, and so thank you for that. I think it's been really detailed, really easy to read, and so thank you for that.
Yes, agreed. It's definitely significantly enhanced our scrutiny, so really appreciate it. Can I just join the dots on availability? Because I think the report is highlighting that we've got quite an urgent task here, and that is we've just, at the beginning of the meeting, celebrated the good progress on recruitment with operational establishment. And then if you look at pages 102 and 103 of the report, we're showing deteriorating availability of our whole-time pumps, and you know, a significant gap, which I know we've just talked about, in terms of our on-call response model is way off where we need it to be. And I think that then feeds through to the issue we've got on page 104, which is again a serious deterioration in our over-the-border mobilisation from supporting services into BFRS. And so I suppose the big question is, I know some of that is to do with our command availability and supervisory capability, but there has to come a point, surely, where the investment we've made in resource levels is feeding through to better availability and reduced reliance on other services. And so I'd just like to sort of understand from officers, when do you think we'll start to see that, and what more do we need to be doing to both get availability to where we want it to be, notwithstanding the challenges on on-call, and significantly reduce the over-the-border reliance that we've got?
I'll answer part of that in the fact that I've already started looking at Q2 and we're already seeing the benefits. So things like our response times, they weren't so great in Q1, Q2, they're looking very healthy, along with a lot of other areas in Q2. So I would say we're already seeing that. What else we need to do, I would pass that over if that's okay.
Yeah, I can pick up on some of that. So Craig's right, you know, we've been looking at the figures, and you know, the more numbers we have, the better the availability, and it is going that way. We do have an issue around skills with sort of crew managers, if you like, supervisory officers, and with drivers. We're addressing that in a number of different ways. We have brought growth bids forward around the number of supervisory officers that we have, but obviously there's a lag in getting them trained, and we're also trialling a new area where we're, it's called a safe to command approach, whereby firefighters who have aspirations to be potentially a crew manager, it's almost a stepping stone so they can command an appliance and an incident that gives us more resilience, so that where at the moment we're having to move people around quite a lot with those skills, that would be much better placed in that respect as well. So there is a slight lag in that, as we heard earlier. We've currently got 25 firefighters at the Fire Service College, and again, when they sort of hit, you know, the stations before Christmas, we'll see another improvement there. But it just takes time to bring. We've got, you know, sort of 40% of our establishment have been through an apprenticeship now, and to get those, you know, really skilled as firefighters, and then to bring them on to be crew commanders takes a little bit of time. But we are seeing already improvements in all areas, and you'll continue to see that as we move forward. I'll give you my word.
Great, thank you. That's reassuring to hear. Any other questions, comments? In which case, are we happy to note the report? Thank you very much. That moves us on to item number 14, which is the People's Strategy 2020 to 25. Councillor Hall to introduce.
Thank you, Chairman. You're being asked to note the People's Strategy 2020 to 25 three-year update. I will hand over to Station Commander Ollie Finch, if he wants to talk to it, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Good morning. The People's Strategy 2020 to 2025 was approved at the October 2020 Fire Authority. The service reviews progress and presents an update to the Fire Authority on an annual basis. Appendices 1 to 5 show progress on the key areas. Achievements to note include Key Area 1, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. The service secured a Change 100 intern working within our resource management team. The candidate started on the 10th of July 2023. Additionally, the service has delivered bespoke ED&I training for all our employees to embed ED&I throughout the service. The service has also been awarded the ENEI Silver Accreditation. Key Area 2, Employee Engagement. The Culture Survey Working Group has evolved into the Employee Engagement Working Group and is made up of employees from across the service. The group continues to use the feedback loop as a tool to encourage idea generation, capture feedback, and crucially ensure the service remains focused on completing the cycle by offering feedback and celebrating success. The People Awards were held in July to celebrate employees' achievements. Key Area 3, Organisational Development and Resourcing. The Organisational Development team are developing the Bucks Fire and Rescue Service Staff Development Pathway project, which is being designed to align to the National Fire Chiefs Council Core Learning Pathway and Leadership Framework. The pathway will provide clarity to employees looking to develop themselves either within their existing role or with an aspiration for the next level role within Bucks Fire and Rescue or another service. Key Area 4, Training, Learning and Development. There has been a significant commitment to delivering a range of whole-time recruitment, transferee and on-call firefighter courses, supporting the service's strategic objective of increasing the operational establishment. This has been delivered alongside recruitment for service support roles. Key Area 5, Employee Health and Wellbeing. The service's mental health support network has reviewed and updated, providing a robust support structure across the service. 37 mental health champions have been trained to provide a range of support to our employees. Trauma support training has been provided for 12 new debriefers, bringing the cadre of available trauma support debriefers to 22. The purpose of trauma support is to provide reassurance about natural reactions, traumatic situations, and an opportunity to discuss coping strategies. An equality impact assessment is in Appendix 6. This paper identifies future opportunities for the strategy for Year 4, Appendix 7. These opportunities will allow the service to measure and record progress made in each area, identify further opportunities to develop our people strategy, and to improve how we support and develop both our existing and future employees. The recommendation of the paper is the contents of this update and progress made in key areas are noted. Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Before I open up to questions, can I just say this must have been a mammoth activity to pull this together. So congratulations, because it's a really detailed and thorough report. So thank you for the work on it. Are there any questions, comments? Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, firstly, can I thank the officer for the report and draw comments, though obviously you know, many people will have known that Barbara Castle was a resident of Buckinghamshire and she brought through the Equal Pay Act. And though I understand the reasons, we're still discussing it. We are in 2023 now, and the legislation on equal pay was passed years ago. I know there's a reason why we're working because of employment, but it is something that I urge that we have an in-depth look at going forward on how we match the aspirations across the diversity that we've got to the Equal Pay Act, because we really shouldn't be talking about it in 2023. The other things is I'm thankful that you've included your sections on diversity, which reflects many of the other comments that have been made in previous committees, and I thank you for your time that you've put into that. Though we have to, as fast as we think we're catching up with what diversity is always changing. So I think that is something that we're going to continue to need to work on going forward, to recognise divine characteristics, diversity, and a growing, more diverse community that we've got to resent the fact that our employees are represented. Reading the report in its entirety, it is very thorough. If I was to say what I felt was lacking in the report, and it isn't meant to be a criticism because I read the nature of the report, it mentions employees but never mentions unions. It mentions, I'm presuming when it means employees, there's consultation with the trade unions. One of the things with the trade unions, who are a national body, they bring something which you can learn from, which has come up and be red flag things that have occurred in other authorities. And I know they're a defined interest group, but when it comes to the management of a large organisation like ourselves, they have a place to play, and they're not mentioned in the report. I'm sure that's meant in the words that employees, but I would imagine that that would be something. I haven't seen a reassurance that there was a conversation, and I would have thought that that was a risk, and we should deal with that because these people are valuable people with life skills that we cherish. But that aside, the fact that you've spent so much time on a diligent and hard-working report to recognise the framework of the world we live in and the different issues that we're facing is to your credit. And my comments are not criticisms, they're observations and things that I would wish to pull out of a report, probably to my own particular clean and interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Let me choose 2 points on your report, because unfortunately I'm cursed as an individual with the fact I've got a very good memory, and we have had the same discussion on a similar item around your observation on the Equal Pay Act. I just want to be really clear so that there's no confusion. The service meets its obligations in respect of the Equal Pay Act. What I think you're observing is the gender pay gap report, which is a challenge that lots of organisations across the UK have, and is a function of the fact that a lot of our senior individuals are male, and that's what we've got to address. But I just think it's really important we don't get a confused picture that we are meeting our legal obligations in respect of the Equal Pay Act. But what you are highlighting, which I know is something the service is focused on, is the gender pay gap reporting. Second item, and I know the Deputy Chief Fire Officer will, I'm sure, reinforce this, just in terms of the unions, just to reassure again members, there is regular dialogue I know officers have with unions, and indeed I meet regularly with the FBU as well, with the Chief Fire Officer. So just to reassure members, that relationship is a strong one locally. I don't know, Anne, are you going first, and then I'm handing over to DC? Yeah, so Anne first.
Yeah, so just on those points, the first one was just in terms of we had an equal pay audit in 2020, and so that report was presented to the executive and the fire authority at that point. The gender pay, my team work on that, and every March we present the findings from that and what we're going to be doing next. And for next time, we're going to be looking at the ethnicity pay gap. We don't have as much. So in terms of the data that we hold, in terms of ethnicity, we are looking at how we're going to be presenting that, so that it's not, so that we can't work out who, so it's not identifiable. So that is going to be presented at the same time. We're just trying to work through what that looks like. And the final bit, just in regards to the trade unions and the consultation, the People's Strategy very much goes out to the trade unions. It goes through the Joint Consultation Forum. I think Ollie went to it twice, just in regards to the paper that he was putting forward, to make sure that he had their input. And we do make sure that all of the unions have their input to the People's Strategy and all the work that we do.
Thank you. Just, it'd be nice to have the words included then in the report.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from members? Councillor McLean.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And I'll just pick up on the FBU bit. Having been the lead member for health and safety for several years now, I can assure Councillor Stutchbury that there is a good relationship between the FBU and the health and safety group. FBU come along with ideas, talk them through with officers, and many of them taken forward, and it is valuable. They bring in some national experience, and so I think I have no concerns that the FBO are not looking after the welfare of their members in a formal way. The other thing is a bit of a plug, pass out parade. I've been to at least 2, and I think it would be great if members could go to the next one, because it's a really positive, informative, emotionally charged day where you see the next group of or cadre of firefighters joining Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes Fire Service. And I think it would be great if more of us went along. Anne did ring me with the next date. Unfortunately, due to IT problems, I've just been looking, it didn't quite make it to my calendar, but I think it's early December. But I think Anne would probably like to answer that point, Chairman. But thank you.
Yeah, the 15th of December is the planned date. So information, all that will be going out in due course.
Any other comments, questions from members before I do mine? Okay, just two things from me. It's just on the equality impact assessment. What was quite striking was a number of the areas were assessed as positive impact from the strategy, but there were two that stood out where we were highlighting no negative impacts. And so I suppose the question is, what is the gap in terms of our activity that means we're not having a similar positive impact? And that's individuals who are married or in civil partnerships, and an individual's gender identity, and then also individuals in different social circumstances and different employee groups. So I was just interested in what the takeout from officers was around why those areas were no negative impacts rather than like everywhere else where we could show a positive impact. And then I couldn't, I was just trying to find it while I was waiting. I'm sure I read in the report, or maybe not in the report but elsewhere, that the staff survey that we're now funding annually is due to take place in January. And I suppose my question to officers is there a reason why we're waiting to January, or have we considered bringing that forward?
Sorry, so in terms of the equality impact assessment and those areas that are shown as neutral, so the married and the civil partnerships, the gender identity, and the social and the employee groups. This is obviously just for the people strategy. We do equality impact assessments for all projects, procedures, all of that side of things. So we will be looking into is there anything else further that we can do into those areas, and we would do that as part of the ongoing work. But there weren't any that were identified just in regards to the people strategy at this point. It is the equality impact assessments are part of the governance process and all of the procedures and papers that move forward.
Yeah, and just in terms of the survey, for the last two surveys we've done, we have focused on January. What we have done is also balance that against the HMIC survey. This was part of the HMIC inspection. They came and surveyed our staff, and what we didn't want to do was clash with it. So what we allowed some time was for that survey to happen, settle. We get the results and the report, and then we'll follow up with our staff survey in January. We're also trying to set it at the same time each year so that staff know when to expect it. We have picked January because that allows us to get the results and then feed that into our next year's plans. So that was the reason for picking them.
Okay, just on that, maybe we can have a separate offline conversation, because I just think experience in other sectors is that the timing of that survey, January isn't necessarily the best time to do those sorts of surveys. So perhaps we'll just have a chat offline about the benefits of doing it earlier. Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, are we, sorry, check what we're being asked to do on this before we move on. We're being asked to note the report. Are members happy to do so? Great, thank you very much. So that moves us to item number 15, which is to extend the period of the BFRS response strategy. So the reason this paper is being brought to us is the current response strategy, which has been live since 2018, is due to end in 2023. And therefore we need to have a response strategy and therefore need to extend it whilst we're doing the CRMP activity. So I'm going to ask Group Commander Stuart Gross to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman, Councillors. This item is for a decision to extend the current response strategy. The current response strategy has been live since 2018 and is now due to end. We have reviewed this strategy and are content that it is still fit for purpose for an extension period. We could write a new response strategy now, but with the CRMP consultation currently underway and the good engagement and information we've heard about earlier, we are currently receiving from our communities, we will better understand the current and future needs of the areas that we serve. It is important that the response strategy aligns with this new CRMP. I'd also like to say that we are not standing still within BFRS. We are considering the risks for Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes. Work has progressed with our high-rise response, wildfire provision, and also engagement with battery energy storage systems which are appearing across our county. We have an emerging risk group to look at new risks within our area. And we've mentioned today about multi-storey car parks as a potential new further risk. So the recommendation is that we extend the life of the current response strategy so that it aligns and is informed by the CRMP. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from members? Councillor Stutchbury.
Firstly, thank you for the document. I understand the logic and the logistical reasons for extending this. What I would ask through the chair and the professional officers is that if there is a radical change in legislation or something which is robustly, that at that point we would bring it back to discuss the amendments. I don't think we can always blue sky think these things, but as the world is changing, the environment's changing, and we do not know what to quantify risk and the fiscal effect that has on us. So I just ask through the chair that if there was a major legislation change and something, would bring this back to the first opportunity, which would be the appropriate committee, to look at again before we bring it back to here, amend it, because it has to go through these type of things. Are such important documents, they have to go through due governance and scrutiny to be assured that everyone plays a part in that. And I'm sure the chairman understands why I'm asking that, because we don't know what the future holds 6 months, 12 months. We've lived in what I could say in the past 2 years has been quite a change in environment period and everything we've had to react to. And to the credit of the Fire Authority, every challenge they've had thrown at them, they've actually met. So, but this will need to be reviewed if that was the case, and I seek assurance that would be the case in agreeing to note it and move it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Shree. So I agree with you that we should make sure that we are reviewing this regularly if the circumstances around it change. I think part of the issue with this response strategy is that it is so it was put in place in 2018 and probably, you know, my observation would be should have been updated with the 2020 public safety plan, and I think that's caused us all sorts of different issues, but I think that's part of why we're in this situation. And I, as officers know, I was a little bit uncomfortable about the fact we were having to extend it. So therefore I think it is absolutely right that any dynamic changes to the environment are fed through. I think just to reassure you, I think if you read the report, and I think as the officers just outlined, things like response to wildfires, etc., are being factored in, and we've got evidence that we're developing and evolving the response strategy as it goes. I think it also links, by the way, back to the point I made on the CRMP, which is that there are things in the CRMP that we don't need to wait for CRMP to get on with to trial, which was covered. So your point, I'm happy to say we should absolutely have it come back if things change, and I know officers will agree with that. And I think, you know, my message is that, you know, we need to make sure that when we launch the CRMP, this response strategy is absolutely aligned to it and where we need it to be. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, just to give you that assurance, I think we've seen in the past with recent events around Manchester Arena, when things have changed, building legislation as well, building regulation, we've always brought back to the authority what we're going to be doing about that and how it impacts, whether that be protection, response or prevention. So just to give you that assurance that we will be bringing anything significant back through the authority that impacts on how we operate.
Thank you very, very much.
Councillor Christensen.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the reassurance that the BFRS is still fit for purpose, because my support for this item was contingent on that confirmation. In terms, I do agree with Councillor Stutchbury and yourself, Chairman, that we should keep this under review. I was just going to suggest that we put a note in for a meeting in 12 months' time to have an affirmation that we're happy to continue this policy and positively confirm that BFRS is still up to date in 12 months' time.
I think it's a very good suggestion, actually. We'll if members are happy, we'll take that as an approach. It's very good. Thank you, Councillor Christensen. Any other comments, questions? Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Stuart, for the report. The comments have been made about electric vehicles, and I guess everyone in the room would know that if you see a number plate or a green thing on the side, it's an electric vehicle. I've got one of those, but I don't have the green, so then it's not 100%. The other thing that's coming on more and more is that those people who've got solar panels sometimes have got batteries in the houses. I've got 2 5-kilowatt batteries, but no one knows about that until I've just told you. So much as you do assessments of commercial buildings, I was wondering whether there's anything the National Fire Chiefs Council might be doing to encourage solar panel installers who put in batteries to develop a database that could be accessed by the fire services. So I've no idea whether, you know, it's usually me firing from the hip, but probably Mick's going to answer in a positive way.
There's lots of new technology coming out. as a service, we're beginning to gain information about the larger solar farms, the installations, private installations. That's information that we do collect certain amounts of information on domestic dwellings. I'm not sure that we're collecting enough information at this time about private solar panels and lithium batteries in houses. Chief?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to come in as well on the more on the aftermath as well. So after every incident we attend, our officers have to complete an incident report. That's currently being reviewed at the Home Office, and that is probably their hottest topic on how we capture this information so that we can see those trends and push back onto the industries. So that is a very hot topic at NFCC at the moment.
And just to support that, I have the dubious honour of my role within the NFCC incorporates under technical response alternative fuels. And we have got a dedicated resource now from the National Fire Chiefs Council working on this whole area, and it's been there about 18 months now. And there are a number of competing priorities around all of that, whether that be electric vehicles, e-scooters, e-bikes, because from a prevention perspective, they're our greatest risk moving forward, and where people are charging them in hallways, etc. And we're already starting to see that. I think there was something came out from the New York Fire Department just recently. It was the second biggest cause of fire fatalities last year, and it increased by over 40%. So it is a huge emerging risk around those areas. And with regard to the battery energy storage, and just say the domestic ones, it's really, really difficult because there are companies that are very reputable who do inform a register that we can access, but equally people are buying batteries off of eBay, etc., installing themselves in airing cupboards and so forth, and we don't know until we get there what we're faced with. But our crews, just to give you that assurance, are well trained in spotting those signs and identifying those, and we do have operational guidance in place around attending premises where you have got solar panels and there's potential for that risk to be there. And we're also developing training packages around, because, as Stuart mentioned, around battery energy storage systems, there's some in our areas already. There's quite a few actually popping up all over the place. And they actually look like refrigeration units as well. So trying to differentiate between a refrigeration unit at 3 o'clock in the morning and a battery energy storage system and how you tackle that fire is something that's really on our radar. So just to give you some assurance, we're working really closely with the National Fire Chiefs Council so that we've got all of the right information in place.
Thank you very much.
Second Councillor, as I'll continue, just struck me, in the CRMP feedback, I observed some feedback from a member of the public that talked about they'd just bought a cottage with a thatched roof and contacted the service for advice on it. And it does just strike me whether there's an awareness campaign that we should be running similarly about storage in solar panels, etc., and whether we can therefore provide advice to people on how they best protect, because it's a good example of risk evolving.
Yeah, I can take that back because that forms part of our prevention strategy moving forward, absolutely.
Councillor Day.
I think you just stole my thunder, Chair. That was going to be my question. Should we start an easy time for a campaign, to raise awareness for private and businesses as well?
Yeah, just to answer, there are national campaigns that are ongoing at the moment as well, and we tap into those campaigns, but absolutely it's something we'll take back and look at something we can run locally as well, because the national campaigns are seasonal, so it might be something we can fit in with or do something outside of that as well. So absolutely we'll take that back, because it is, so from a prevention perspective, it's one of our huge emerging risks.
Councillor Fuller.
I mean, I'm not very well versed with this kind of thing, but would there be an expectation of the homeowner to register any kind of solar panel point or batteries or even an electric vehicle point in their properties? And would we be able to access the insurance database, maybe?
Again, there is no expectation and there's no requirement or there's no regulation for that to actually happen. We're pushing at a national level for more regulation, because technology always outstrips regulation anyway. So we are pushing nationally so that there isn't going to be sort of like an unregulated sort of industry. The issues that we have are generally not the ones that are installed professionally and correctly. It's those that are sort of do-it-yourself type approaches. We had this many years ago with the change to LPG vehicles as well. The professional ones were safe. The ones that were done sort of that we didn't know about, and it's that difficult. It's not the ones that we do know about, it's the ones we don't know about. But yeah, we will be running campaigns, you know, so that people are aware of the risk that they may have, because a lot of people are just not aware of the risk.
Any other comments or questions? No, in which case, can I ask members, are we happy to approve the extension of the response strategy with the additional recommendation that we review it in 12 months' time? Thank you. Okay, that moves us on to, actually, before I move to the item 16, can I just confirm date of the next meeting? Sorry, I've just realised I haven't got it. Here we go. Sorry, it's on the back of my agenda. To note that the date of the next meeting of the Fire Authority will be held on Wednesday, the 6th of December at 11 a.m. I'm now going to move to item number 16, which is exclusion of the public and press, to consider excluding the public and press representatives from the meeting by virtue of paragraph 1 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as the report contains information relating to any individual, and paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as the report contains information relating to the financial business affairs of a person, brackets including the authority, and on these grounds it's considered the need to keep information exempt outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Are members agreed? Thank you.
Chairman, I just want confirmation that the recording